Evolution by natural selection is really a simple concept. It just happens. There's nothing, if you have certain conditions, if they exist, it will happen no matter what. The evolution by natural selection was proposed by Charles Darwin in 1859 in his book On the Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection. If we look at it carefully, the essence of Darwinism was simple. Organisms vary with respect to traits, and that variability is heritable. So offspring and parents resemble each other because of inheritance. That traits that the parent has get passed to the offspring through an inherited process. Organisms produce more offspring than can survive and reproduce in their environment. In other words, there's something going on where not all of them can survive in that environment. Some can, some can't. Organisms with the more favorable traits will outsurvive and or out-reproduce those with less favorable traits. So in a population of parents, some have traits that result in them being more likely to survive and better at reproduction compared to other individuals. So through this selection process, those individuals that have the more favorable traits will differentially survive and reproduce. Evolution then becomes a change in the proportion of individuals from one generation to the next in a population that has different traits. So you have a population, there's lots of different traits or different traits among these individuals, which is heritable. The parents who have the traits that are more favorable outsurvive, out-reproduce those that have the traits that are less favorable. So in the next generation, the parents that had the more favorable traits, they'll reproduce more. In the next generation, you will have an increase in the favorable trait and a decrease in the unfavorable trait. Evolution by natural selection is an inescapable process. That's all it is, inescapable. If organisms vary, that's a condition. So if individuals in a population vary, and if the variability is heritable, the children resemble their parents, and if individuals with some heritable traits survive and reproduce more than individuals with other traits, this is the process of natural selection, then the outcome is that favorable traits will increase in frequency in the next generation, and that equals evolution. The modern view of evolution focuses on populations. Populations evolve, not individuals. So a horse can change its winter coat, or its coat, and become thicker in the winter and less thick in the summer. Some individuals go through changes in physiology, some species, like bears, where their physiology changes and they can survive the winter better. Those are adaptations to the environment. They are not traits that are under selection. I can't say that. It's not right. Let's start this slide again. The modern view of evolution focuses on populations, not on individuals. Individuals do not evolve. Individuals are here and we have traits, even though some of these traits may adapt to the environment, like a thicker coat on a horse in the wintertime than in the summer, but that's not evolution. That's just changing of a trait in direct response to the environment. A population is a group of interbreeding individuals. So, and we also, a fundamental in this is that genes cause proteins, proteins cause traits. So the genes are under selection. The alternative forms of genes are under selection because they make different proteins that result in traits that could be more favorable or less favorable. But to look at a population, if you look at the image on the left, the upper left, This is a map of the geographical distribution of different species of honeybees. There are several different species. They're called honeybees. They're all in the genus Apis. They evolved in different areas of the world. Here's Europe and Africa. In Asia, you have Apis cerana, which is a close cousin of Apis mellifera. When you get down into the more tropical areas, you get what we call the dwarf bees and the giant bees. They're sister species. They represent different populations, and they are under selection. They interbreed with each other, and because they interbreed, that population is subject to evolution by natural selection. Here we have the Western honeybee, like what we keep, what beekeepers keep here in the United States and mostly worldwide. This is the number one species. It's one species, it's Apis mellifera, but there are different forms of it. We recognize different races here throughout Central Europe and Scandinavia and Great Britain. The subspecies is called mellifera. If we get over here, this is Carnica ligustica, which is the form of the bee that's used most in commercial beekeeping in the United States. It's located in Italy. And so these different subspecies, they also call them races, they have defining characteristics. They look different, they have some different behavior, but it's all one species in that they interbreed freely, but they have populations that are somewhat distinct. Even though they'll interbreed with each other and they're fully fertile when they interbreed, they adapted genetically to their local conditions and environments and resulted in trait differences between, say, Spain and Scandinavia. Because the environments are very different, they have traits that are adapted to those specific environments. The sources of variation within population are migration and mutation. So mutations occur at individual gene loci and can change the form of a gene, which can then change the form of the proteins that it is involved in producing, which can then alter the traits that become exposed to natural selection by the individual and make them subject to evolution. Mutation and migration is the other way. Populations can interbreed. Genes, there could be allelic differences, say, between the mellifera, Apis mellifera population and the Apis mellifera macedonica population. So new genes can flow in, and then they can be under selection in this new environment that they're currently in. So evolution requires variability. If you don't have genetic variability, you can't have evolution. And that variability, again, comes from random mutations and migration. It's not directed. The process is not progressive. There isn't a goal of evolution. It's just whatever happens to be there, whatever the current forms are that come about by random processes, for the most part. Whatever happens to be there is under selection and will result in changes in the frequency of traits in that population. So the population genetics definition of evolution is a change in gene frequencies from one generation to the next. The organismal definition, like we were talking before, was the change in the frequency of traits in a population. But those traits are determined by changes in the traits, by changes in the frequencies of alternative alleles at specific genes. So a couple of diagrams I dug up on the internet. So here we have a population of caribou. So this population may be migrating together or whatever and tend to mate with each other more than they mate with other populations that they might come across. And they have variation. They have these light-colored individuals and they have dark-colored individuals. The differences in these characteristics may result in differences in their ability to reproduce or or to survive. So in this particular case, something was working against the lighter colored ones. The darker colored ones had a higher chance of surviving and reproducing. And so after you eliminate these and these reproduce, the population changes because the offspring are inheriting those traits from their parents. This could be predation, perhaps. Maybe the wolves see these lighter colored caribou and take them down faster, or whatever. Another example. So here's a population of mice. They could be in a barnyard, in between the haystacks and the hay bales of hay and the barn. You have two different color forms. You have the black ones, and you have these lighter brown colored ones. But maybe they have to run between them. They have to run from the haystack over to the stack of straw, then into the barn or whatever. But as they're out there and they're exposed to the environment, there are predators. And the light-colored ones are more easily seen. And so they're more heavily predated. Then the ones that survive, they reproduce. And then the next generation, what you find is a shift to more of the dark forms and fewer of the light forms. That's evolution by natural selection.